I barely had time to knock before my Aunt Lunda opened the front door. She looked at me, then at my two kids standing behind me with our duffel bags. "What are you doing here?" she asked. "Mark left this morning," I said. "I just need somewhere safe for a few days, please." She didn't answer right away. She glanced back into the house, then looked me straight in the eye. "No." I honestly thought I'd misheard her. "What do you mean, no?" Before she could answer, my cousin Emily shouted from somewhere inside, "Mom, tell her there's no room." I could hear people talking. I could smell dinner cooking. There were 4 cars parked outside. There was room. There just wasn't room for me. Then my Uncle Robert stepped into the doorway. "You can't expect everyone else to clean up your mess," he said. "You're being selfish." I looked down at my son as he squeezed my hand. "Mom, aren't we staying with Grandma?" Nobody answered him. I picked up our bags, walked my kids back to the car, and before I climbed into the driver's seat, I looked at that house one last time. "We're done forever," I whispered. At the time, I thought those 3 words were the end of my relationship with my family. I had no idea they were actually the beginning of a completely different life. I sat in my car for a few seconds, staring at my grandmother's house through the windshield. Part of me wanted to run back to the front door. I kept thinking maybe my aunt had misunderstood. Maybe Grandma didn't know I was there. Maybe if I knocked one more time, everything would be different. Then my phone rang. The screen showed my grandmother's home number. I grabbed it so fast I nearly dropped it. "Grandma," I said. For a moment, all I heard was static. Then came her voice. Weak, shaky, almost breathless. "Sarah." Every ounce of relief rushed through me at once. "I'm here," I said quickly. "We're outside," Aunt Lunda said. "Don't leave." The words were barely audible. Then I heard another voice in the background. "What are you doing?" The phone suddenly scraped across something. There was a muffled sound. The call disconnected. I stared at my phone in disbelief. I called back immediately. No answer. Again. Straight to voicemail. Again. Nothing. I looked back at the house. The curtains that had been moving only moments earlier were perfectly still now. No one came outside. No one called me back. My daughter leaned forward from the back seat. "Mom, is Grandma okay?" I forced myself to smile. "I don't know, sweetheart." That was the truth. I didn't know anything anymore. I started the engine and drove away because I had no other choice. For the first time in my life, I wasn't driving toward a destination. I was simply driving until I figured out where my children were going to sleep. That morning had started like any other Tuesday. By lunchtime, my marriage was over. My husband, Mark, had quietly packed 2 suitcases while I was making sandwiches for the kids. I remember asking, "Are you going somewhere for work?" He didn't even look at me. "No." He zipped the second suitcase. "I can't do this anymore." I waited for him to explain. Instead, he picked up his truck keys. "What about the kids?" I asked. "They'll be better off with you." It was such a strange thing to say. Not "we'll figure this out." Not "I'm sorry." Just, "They'll be better off with you." Then he walked out. Our son chased him onto the porch. "Dad." Mark never turned around. An hour later, I realized I couldn't afford to stay in the house by myself. The rent was due in less than 2 weeks. Most of our savings were already gone. I packed only what we absolutely needed. A few clothes, school supplies, medicine, my children's favorite blankets. Everything else stayed behind. As I loaded the last bag into the trunk, I didn't waste time calling friends. I didn't search for shelters. I didn't book a motel. There was only one place I believed we belonged. My grandmother's house. She had always told me the same thing whenever life became difficult. This door is always open for you. I believed her. Because for years, I'd treated that house like my own. Whenever Grandma needed groceries, I was the one who went shopping. Whenever she had doctor's appointments, I drove her. When a pipe burst in her laundry room, I spent my weekend helping clean everything up. If she needed prescriptions picked up, if she needed someone to rake leaves, if she just felt lonely, she called me. Not Aunt Lunda, not Uncle Robert, not Emily. Me. I never kept score. She was my grandmother. Family helped family. At least, that was what I thought. Looking back now, I realized something that never crossed my mind back then. Every time I visited Grandma, someone else always seemed strangely interested in one particular subject. Money. Emily would casually ask if Grandma had updated her will. Uncle Robert loved bringing up the value of the house. And Aunt Lunda always insisted she was handling all the important paperwork. At the time, I ignored those conversations. They made me uncomfortable. I wasn't helping Grandma because I expected anything. I loved her. That was enough. I wish everyone else had felt the same. As the sun disappeared below the horizon, I pulled into the parking lot of the cheapest roadside motel I could find. I counted the cash in my wallet twice before walking into the office. The room wasn't much. 2 beds, faded wallpaper, a humming air conditioner that sounded like it might quit at any moment. But when my kids jumped onto the beds and smiled anyway, I realized something. It wasn't home, but at least no one had slammed the door in our faces. Still, after they finally fell asleep that night, I sat alone by the window with my phone in my hand. I called Grandma's number one more time. Straight to voicemail. I listened to the silence for a long time before whispering the question I couldn't stop asking myself. What had really happened inside that house? 2 years can change a person more than most people realize. When I looked back on the woman who had driven away from my grandmother's house with 2 scared kids and a trunk full of clothes, she felt like someone I used to know. Life hadn't become easy. I'd simply stopped waiting for someone else to save me. The morning after we checked into that motel, I started applying for every job I could find. I cleaned offices before sunrise, stocked shelves at a grocery store in the afternoons, and took weekend housekeeping jobs whenever someone needed extra help. It was exhausting, but every paycheck meant one more week with a roof over my children's heads. One Saturday, after finishing a cleaning job, the homeowner stopped me before I left. "Have you ever thought about starting your own business?" she asked. I laughed. "With what money?" She smiled. "You'd be surprised how many people are looking for someone they can actually trust." Those words stayed with me. Months later, after saving every extra dollar I could, I bought a few basic supplies and printed inexpensive business cards. It wasn't much. Just me. A mop. A vacuum. And a promise to treat every client's home the way I wished people had treated mine. Slowly, referrals turned into regular customers. Regular customers turned into employees. Before I realized it, I wasn't cleaning every house myself anymore. I was running a residential cleaning company. The kids noticed the difference before I did. One evening, my daughter looked around our small but comfortable townhouse and smiled. "Mom." "Yeah, I like this home better." "Really?" She nodded. "No one's mean here." I had to turn away before she saw my eyes filling with tears. For the first time in a long time, we weren't just surviving. We were building something. And somewhere along the way, I stopped checking my phone for missed calls from family. If they wanted me in their lives, they knew where to find me. They never came. Until they suddenly did. It started with a community charity fundraiser our company had agreed to sponsor. I almost didn't attend. I was busy. The kids had soccer practice the next morning. But one of my employees insisted. You should go, she said. People like meeting the owner. So I went. The banquet hall buzzed with conversation as local business owners mingled around decorated tables. I was talking with another sponsor when I heard someone say my name. Is Sarah? I turned around. For a second, none of us spoke. It was Aunt Linda. She stared at me like she'd seen a ghost. Her eyes moved from my tailored blazer to the company logo embroidered on it, then to the badge hanging around my neck. Before she could say anything, Uncle Robert walked over. His mouth literally fell open. Sarah. I smiled politely. Hello, Uncle Robert. Emily joined them a moment later. You look different. I've been busy. That was all I said. The awkward silence stretched between us until Aunt Linda suddenly stepped closer with the warmest smile I'd seen from her in years. There you are, she said loudly, as if we were close. We've been telling everyone how proud we are of you. I almost laughed. Proud? 2 years ago, she wouldn't even let my children step inside her house. Now she was speaking loudly enough for nearby guests to hear. One woman standing beside us smiled. You must be Sarah's family. Oh, absolutely, Linda replied before I could answer. We're very close. Very close. The words hit me harder than I expected. I looked directly into her eyes. Really? For just a second, her smile faltered. Then Uncle Robert quickly changed the subject. So, how are the kids? They're doing great. We've missed them. I didn't respond. Because if they'd missed them, they could have picked up a phone. Emily cleared her throat. Grandma asks about you. That caught my attention. She does. She's been sick, Emily said quietly. Very sick. The room suddenly felt smaller. No one told me. Linda reached for my arm. We've been trying to find you for months. I gently stepped back before she could touch me. You knew exactly where I lived 2 years ago. No one answered. Instead, Linda lowered her voice. Sarah, Grandma really needs to see you. Something about the way she said it didn't feel genuine. It felt urgent. Calculated. Like they were following a script. As the conversation ended, I headed toward the exit, more confused than when I'd arrived. I was almost at my car when an elderly woman called my name. Sarah. I turned. It was Mrs. Henderson, one of my grandmother's oldest friends. She looked around to make sure no one else was watching before reaching into her purse. I've been waiting a long time to give you this. She placed a sealed envelope into my hands. My grandmother gave me this. Mrs. Henderson nodded. She told me, her voice trembled, to give it to you only if your family suddenly started looking for you again. I stared at the envelope. Written across the front, in my grandmother's unmistakable handwriting, were just 2 words. For Sarah. I didn't open the envelope in the parking lot. My hands were shaking too much. Instead, I sat inside my car with the doors locked, resting the envelope on the steering wheel for nearly a full minute. I traced my grandmother's handwriting with my thumb. For Sarah. She had written that herself. Not Aunt Linda. Not an attorney. My grandmother. I carefully broke the seal. Inside was a folded letter written on the floral stationery Grandma had used for years. The first line hit me so hard I had to read it twice. My dearest Sarah, if you're reading this, then Linda finally needed something from you. A chill ran through me. I kept reading. I need you to know one thing before anything else. I never turned you away. My vision blurred. I blinked back tears and continued. The night you came to the house, I was asleep after taking new medication. I didn't know you had been there until hours later. I lowered the letter into my lap. That phone call. The weak voice. Don't leave. She had been trying to stop me, not reject me. I picked the letter back up. Linda told everyone I shouldn't be disturbed. When I woke up and learned you'd come, I asked why no one had brought you to me. No one could give me a straight answer. I closed my eyes. For 2 years, I had believed my grandmother either agreed with them or had chosen to stay silent. Neither had been true. The silence had been manufactured. I unfolded the second page. The tone changed immediately. There is another reason I need you to know the truth. I kept reading. For several years, I trusted Linda to help manage my bills and bank accounts. I eventually discovered money was disappearing. I frowned. Money. Grandma had always been careful. She balanced her checkbook by hand every month. She noticed every dollar. The next sentence answered the question already forming in my mind. When I confronted her, she blamed accounting mistakes. I wanted to believe her, but the records told a different story. My stomach tightened. I suddenly remembered all those conversations I'd overheard. Linda insisting she'd handle the paperwork. Uncle Robert asking about property values. Emily casually bringing up the will. At the time, I dismissed all of it. Now, every memory fit together like pieces of a puzzle. I continued reading. After speaking with my attorney, I changed my estate plan. I removed Linda as executor and named you instead. I stared at the page. Me. Grandma explained why. You never came because you expected anything. You came because you loved me. That is exactly the person I trust to carry out my wishes. A tear landed on the paper. Not because of the inheritance. Because for 2 years, I'd wondered whether I'd somehow failed her. Instead, she had trusted me more than anyone else. The final paragraph was written in noticeably shakier handwriting. If Linda ever tries to bring you back into the family after pushing you away, you'll know why. Please don't let guilt make your decisions. Let the truth guide them. I folded the letter carefully and placed it back inside the envelope. Just then, my phone rang. An unfamiliar number. I answered. Hello. Ms. Mitchell. Yes. My name is Daniel Brooks. I'm your grandmother's estate attorney. I sat up straighter. I've been trying to reach you. My heart started racing. Is Grandma? She's still with us, he said gently, but her condition has declined. There are several legal documents she wants finalized while she's able. I gripped the phone tighter. I'll come. There is one more thing you should know. I waited. Your family has already been informed that you're the executor named in the current estate plan. Silence. Then he added quietly. They were surprised. Surprised. That explained everything at the fundraiser. The smiles. The compliments. The sudden concern. It had never been about reconciliation. It had been about control. As soon as I ended the call, my phone buzzed again. This time it was Aunt Linda. I let it ring. Then it rang again. And again. Finally, a voicemail notification appeared. I hesitated before pressing play. For the first time in my life, I heard my aunt crying. Sarah, she sobbed, please, don't shut us out. We need to talk. Please call me back. I looked down at my grandmother's letter, resting on the passenger seat. Then I looked back at my phone. For the first time in 2 years. The decision wasn't theirs anymore. It was mine. I didn't call Aunt Linda back. Not that day. Not the next day. The only call I returned was the attorney's. The following afternoon, I walked into his office carrying my grandmother's letter. He greeted me with a kind smile. I'm glad you came. So am I replied. He spread several folders across the conference table. I think it's important that you see everything for yourself. For the next hour, he carefully walked me through my grandmother's estate documents. Every page confirmed what she'd written in her letter. Nearly a year before I showed up at her house with my children, Grandma had legally changed her estate plan. Aunt Linda had once been named executor. She wasn't anymore. I was. There was no question in your grandmother's mind, Mr. Brooks said. She was very clear about why she made the change. He handed me a signed statement. In it, Grandma had written, "Sarah has cared for me without expecting anything in return. I trust her judgment because her actions have always come from love, not financial interest." I had to look away for a moment. For 2 years, I'd carried the weight of believing I wasn't wanted. The whole time, Grandma had been fighting to protect me. Mr. Brooks opened another folder. "This is the financial review your grandmother requested." Inside were bank statements, canceled checks, and accounting records. One by one, they painted a picture that was impossible to ignore. Payments had been made from Grandma's accounts for expenses that had nothing to do with her care. Personal credit card bills, home renovations at Linda's house, vacation deposits, cash withdrawals that couldn't be explained. Each transaction had been documented. Each discrepancy had been flagged. When your grandmother questioned these expenses, Mr. Brooks explained, your aunt insisted they were bookkeeping errors. Your grandmother wasn't convinced. So she investigated. He nodded. Quietly. That investigation was what had led Grandma to change her will. And that was why I had been kept away. It had never been about finding space for me and my children. It had been about protecting a lie. The night I arrived at Grandma's house, Linda had realized something. If Grandma saw me, she would almost certainly tell me what she'd discovered. She couldn't risk that, so she made sure I never crossed the front door. The realization hurt more than I expected. Not because of the money. Because someone I'd trusted had looked at 2 frightened children and decided preserving her secret mattered more than helping family. A few days later, I finally saw my grandmother. She looked smaller than I remembered, but the moment she saw me, she reached for my hand. "My girl," she whispered. I sat beside her bed and held her gently. "I'm here." Tears rolled down her cheeks. "I thought you stopped loving me." I shook my head immediately. "I thought you didn't want me anymore." For a long moment, neither of us spoke. We didn't have to. 2 years of misunderstanding disappeared in that hospital room. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. "You don't have to apologize. I should have found a way." I squeezed her hand. They made sure neither of us knew the truth. She closed her eyes for a moment. I hated losing those years. So did I. We spent hours talking. Not about the estate. Not about Linda. About birthdays we'd missed. School plays. My son's first baseball season. My daughter's piano recital. Simple moments that should have been shared. Before I left that evening, Grandma smiled. "I knew you'd come. I'll keep coming." And I did. Every chance I got. The legal process moved forward exactly as Grandma had planned. The financial records were reviewed. Linda was formally removed from every responsibility connected to the estate. When the evidence was presented to the family, no one argued. They couldn't. The documents spoke for themselves. One by one, relatives reached out to me. Uncle Robert called first. "I should have asked your side," he admitted. "You should have." There wasn't much else to say. Emily apologized too. "I believed what Mom told us." "I know. But I still made my own choices." She quietly agreed. Some relationships couldn't be repaired simply because someone finally admitted they were wrong. Trust doesn't return the moment an apology arrives. It returns through consistent actions. And in some cases, it never returns at all. As for Linda, she lost more than the role she had fought so hard to keep. The family stopped relying on her version of events. People who had once defended her began questioning years of decisions they'd never bothered to examine. Her reputation changed almost overnight, not because I tried to ruin it, but because the truth finally caught up with her. I never celebrated that. There was nothing joyful about watching a family fall apart. But I also refused to carry responsibility for consequences she had created herself. Over the next several months, my business continued growing. We added new employees, signed larger commercial contracts, moved into a small office. My children flourished too. My son, who had once asked why Grandma wouldn't let us stay, slowly let go of that painful memory after spending time with her again. My daughter decorated her own bedroom exactly the way she'd always wanted. One evening, she looked around our home and smiled. "Mom, yeah, this feels safe." I smiled back. "It is." When Grandma eventually passed away, it was peaceful. I was sitting beside her, holding her hand. Exactly where I wanted to be. Afterward, I carried out every instruction she had left behind. Not because I was the executor, because I was her granddaughter. The house where I had once stood with two frightened children and nowhere to go was eventually sold, just as Grandma had requested. The porch where I had been told there was no room became someone else's front door. I never drove by again. I didn't need to. That chapter of my life had already closed. Looking back now, I understand something I couldn't see that night. Being turned away didn't destroy my future. It forced me to build one that no longer depended on people who only valued me when it benefited them. The family that rejected me couldn't recognize my life 2 years later. And by then, I barely recognized the woman who had once begged to be let inside.